Hey guys, it's Amber and I'm back with another Hedgehog Hollow project featuring the January 2020 kit. I'm going to be using Aim High, Just a Phase, and To the Moon and Back with this project. And there are 4 stamp sets included in this kit and I'm using 3 of them today. I'm also going to use WOW embossing powders in Midnight Dream and Clear Sparkle. I didn't realize that those lids were open and so I got glitter all over myself. So let's get started. I'm going to start with this. It's kind of like a watercolor wash stamp, so it's an easy way to get that watercolor look. Today we're going to be glitter embossing it. I'm just going to run an eraser over it just to condition it since this is the first time I'm using it, and I'll treat my paper with an anti-static powder bag. I'm using the WOW Ultra Slow Drying Embossing ink pad here. And I am going to ink this twice because it's such a large solid stamp and also because you can't really see the clear ink very well. I want to make sure that I didn't miss any spots and that I have it inked up really well. I am going to use the WOW Midnight Dream embossing powder, which is so pretty. It's kind of like a navy base and then it also has some silver glitter in it. So a trick with your glitter embossing powders is ever so slightly tap your cardstock. This is not one that you want to knock or flick with your finger really hard. It's going to cause all of your glitter to fall off of your cardstock. I also find I have better success with the WOW embossing pad versus some of my other pads that I have. The glitter seems to stick better to that. So if you're struggling with your glitter powders, give that a try. My other trick with the glitter powders is to start heating it from the back first. That will start to melt the embossing powder and give the glitter something to stick to before you start blowing it from the front and kind of blowing your glitter away. So now I'm taking one of the moon phase stamps and I'm going to stamp this in the embossing ink onto a piece of vellum. I'm going to emboss this with metallic silver embossing powder, also from WOW, and I'm going to be using the super fine embossing powder. There's a lot of detail in this stamp and I want to make sure that I get it all. I'm also using this like little tassel-y kind of embellishment here. So I want to make sure I get all that detail. These super fine embossing powders are really going to help you do that. And you can see how finely milled this powder is and it embosses beautifully. So again, I treated the vellum with the anti-static powder tool. Now this isn't a glitter cardstock, so you can flick it a little bit and just funnel all of that back into your container. Now for vellum, I'm going to preheat my tool. This is the dual speed tool from WOW. I'm going to preheat it on the 2nd speed, which is the highest speed, and then I'm going to turn it down to speed 1 before I bring it to my vellum. That's a slower speed. I find that it has a little less heat and you can see that it's not warping my paper. The vellum can be more delicate, and even though my heat tool is pretty close to the paper, I'm not getting any warping. You can see that my paper is staying really flat. I had a lot of trouble. I have the Wagner heat tool and I love it, but it used to warp my vellum and I'm really excited to have a tool that's not going to warp my vellum. Here I have the WOW embossing pen and I'm just going to fill in a couple of these areas with that same with some embossing ink, and this pen works really great. This is the first time I'm using it and I was really happy with how the glitter embossing powder stuck to the ink in this pen. Sometimes I find the pens can be pretty dry and that the embossing powders don't stick very well, but this one did a really good job, so I was quite happy with it. It's a brand new pen also, so that could be part of it too. But so once I get I'm kind of just picking and choosing some areas so that the design looks balanced, and I'm using that same Midnight Dream embossing powder, sprinkling that on, and I'll knock off any excess with a dry paintbrush that I just have reserved specifically for embossing powders. And then we'll go ahead and heat set that. Again, I'll heat set it on the number 1 setting, which is the lower speed, just to make sure that my vellum doesn't get warped. As the embossing powder melts, you'll see that the glitter will start to sparkle a little bit more. I think it changes its direction as it's melting and adhering to that, and so you'll see it sparkle. And here it is here. Now, I love this right here. I kind of wish I had stopped at this point and done a clean and simple card, but I wanted to create a background with stripes. I really like stripes, so I took some score tape, and this is 1/2 inch, I have 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch, and I decided to make a background. Things got all sorts of busy with this background, but in any case, I thought it was a really good technique. If you're struggling with your glitter embossing powders, try adhering it to tape like this. You know, if you have Be Creative tape or the score tape or any kind of double-sided tapes like this, it adheres awesome. So it's a good technique to use. So anyhow, I'm using my grid mat to set up these diagonal stripes. I used my Teflon bone folder just to make sure they were all adhered. I'm going to turn it over and just cut off the excess from the back. And then once I have all of the release papers off, I'll go ahead and, before I take off my release papers, because I've touched the cardstock so much, I'm going to go ahead and use the anti-static powder tool. Then I'll take off the release papers and we'll go ahead and get the embossing powder on. So we're going to use that same embossing powder, and you're going to see it's going to adhere beautifully to the double-sided tape. It's also going to have really nice sharp edges. Now, it adheres to this tape like nobody's business, so you can, when you're using your glitter embossing powder, give it a good hard knock and knock off any excess, and it's not going to be a problem at all because it's going to stick to that adhesive. So for this, because I need to heat kind of through the tape to the embossing powder. So I do put this on the second setting, so the higher setting. And I don't really get too much warping to my cardstock or anything like that, but I start heating from the back and then I go ahead and bring it around to the front, and you can see that the glitter is going to start to sparkle a little bit more as it changes directions and catches the light just a little bit differently. And I kind of just take my time with it. So here we have this here, and again, I could have stopped right here, and this would have been a lovely card, but no. I don't know what my deal, I just kept going. I just kept adding more and more sparkle, more and more glitter. It was just like not enough. So here I've added more tape to the center, so it's a completely striped background, and now I'm sprinkling or dumping on clear sparkle embossing powder. So I'll just knock off the excess, heat it, and so now we're full sparkle, people. This is, I don't think I've ever created such a sparkly card in my life. So I needed a sentiment. I couldn't really stamp a sentiment over all of that embossing. So what I decided to do is take the moon and a sentiment that would fit in there. And there's a couple sentiments that'll fit into this small moon. I used some silver embossing powder, and then, you know, let's have more sparkle. I added the clear sparkle to the center of the moon with the Wow embossing pen. And here we have it here. I did trim it down with a rectangle die, and then I matted it with Curious Metallic Luster cardstock, added some sequins, and that finished off the card. For the next card, I had this rectangle or this frame left over, and so I decided to make a second card using the large sentiment because that can carry an entire card. So I'm going to emboss that in the same Midnight Dream embossing powder. And I was really impressed with how well that embossed. Particularly, I'll mention it in the close-up. The smallest words in the sentiment have like an empty line in between. It's like a lined sentiment, and even that embossed really well in the glitter. So the and the and. Here I decided that I needed to have like glitter splatter on this, so I sprinkled it with some water and added the clear sparkle embossing powder to this. I'm just going to go ahead and heat set both the sentiment and the clear sparkle spatter. And then look at the to, the, and. This is a really well-made stamp, and I was impressed at how well it embossed with the glitter embossing powder because those are such fine letters there. Here are the two finished cards. I had a lot of fun embossing these stamps and adding these striped backgrounds. I'm just now realizing there's literally everything on this card is embossed. There's no just regular stamping. So if that's overkill, then stick with the clean and simple design. And thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you real soon with more inspiration.